And with that, we have our next two guests joining us. Again, Bill Taranto, president of the Merck Global Innovation Fund, and Richard Hanbury, the founder and CEO of and Richard, if you could just accept your invitation to join the panelist room, then you can jump in here and join us. And Richard is the CEO and the co-founder of Sana, which is one of the more revolutionary digital health devices that HITLAB has seen over the last several years now, and very excited to have them both join us. Handing the virtual microphone over to Professor Taranto. Bill, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Stan. As always, it's a pleasure to be talking to the Columbia Network. I really enjoy the HITLAB and being part of it and working with Columbia, but I'm real excited today to talk to Richard Hanbury, who I've gotten to meet by email, but I'm really excited to, now that I get to meet him in person almost, as we are in a virtual setting. But today I'm going to ask Richard some really interesting questions about, a bit of his journey, but also about Sana and digital health. And so we're going to kick it off, Richard, today with just, for the audience that doesn't know you and about your journey, from a bridge in the Yemen to Sana IO, perhaps you could tell the audience a little bit about, how you got here. And I'm really interested to hear about the bridge from Yemen part and what that's all about and how you got to where you are today.
Well, thank you, Bill, and pleasure to meet you virtually rather than just email. And thanks to Stan and HITLabs, always a pleasure. So the company name comes from Sana'a in Yemen, which was where this bridge was near, and I had my journey into everything health related was split-second decision on a bridge to avoid a head-on collision next to a petrol truck by going off the bridge and 60 foot down into a dry riverbed. So I sustained a spinal cord injury, a traumatic injury, an aortic tear, and a bunch of other things. All of that resulted in a nerve damage pain problem that was so severe I was given a 5-year life expectancy. So went through standard of care. Standard of care has improved a little bit with improvements in spinal cord stimulators, but really not a great deal advance in how nerve damage pain is treated in the last sort of 20, 30 years. I set about trying to solve the problem for myself. And the journey of the company is then taking what works to solve my problem to figure out how to get it to help lots of other people. So that's the very short version.
Yeah, well, it's wonderful that you survived and now you're starting to help patients, which leads me to my next question. Can you tell the audience a little about Sana's technology, and then how do you go about helping patients in the spinal cord community?
Certainly. So this is the device. So it's an audio-visual neuromodulation. So someone puts it on, turns it on. They're getting pulses of light through closed eyes and pulses of sound into their ears. And we're essentially producing a very deep relaxation effect very quickly. So you can see this as anxiety relief on demand. So any area of pain or mental health where anxiety is a component, we can be a useful tool in the toolkit. For me, it wiped out all of the underlying pain because enough neuroplasticity meant that my brain could wire around the central brain mediation part of that pain process. And because my pain was very similar to amputee pain, in that I didn't actually have a pain silver coming up my spinal cord, I had a corrupted data stream. Enough neuroplasticity in the brain was able to wire around that problem. The other end of the spectrum of that kind of peripheral pain versus central mediation would be something like chronic regional pain syndrome. And there we're helping people sort of 10 to 30%. Of our 2 pivotal trials underway at the moment, we have fibromyalgia and neuropathic pain. The fibromyalgia study, we're around about a 50% improvement in quality of life. And that is ongoing as someone carries on using the device sort of once a day. And the neuropathic pain study is being done at Mount Sinai. The next pivotals to start will be anxiety. And we just got a DoD grant for PTSD.
Okay, fantastic. So if you think beyond sort of pain and anxiety, this is, I find this to be a very unique sort of technology, especially on even mental health, generally speaking. And so where do you see the application even moving, further downstream as you continue to build out your clinical trials, your technology? I'm just curious what you're thinking.
Well, so the picture in the broader population, I think, is pretty similar to the DoD and VA. And with the grant that they just gave us, they switched our focus from how do you improve quality of care at specialty care with psychologists and psychiatrists to how do you be a stopgap for when there aren't enough of those people. So in all sectors, COVID is producing a greater attrition of psychologists and psychiatrists than has been seen before. And more people aren't starting the 7-year process to become a psychologist or psychiatrist. So there's a growing problem of shortage of mental health professionals, whilst mental health problems in the community are escalating. So part of that solution is then all of the apps that are making great progress on delivering things like cognitive behavioral therapy via an app. So the Happifys, the Teladocs, there are some really good players out there that are delivering solutions that will help a large number of people. And we sit so between them and psychologists and psychiatrists. So what do you do with the population that is needing more than they can be helped with by an app, but you haven't got the psychologists or psychiatrists available, or you can't afford them? So we're kind of we're that next tier down. Obviously, we are part of the gold-plated solution when you're psychologists and psychiatrists as well. But the real need that's growing in the market is what you do with people when they can't be helped by a simple app.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Okay, good. My next question is sort of about, kind of the theme of today's panels and what everybody's talking about is sort of that convergence of digital and medical device. And where do you think that's sort of going in the next few years? And where do you think you fit in that? Because again, you're kind of that intersection of what is a true therapeutic, but not in a traditional sense of a pill, but it's a mix of digital and device.
Yeah, so on the sort of pill side, there's been a real challenge delivering benefits within mental health from the pharmaceutical side, and I have theories about why that is to do with feedback loops that just don't exist really. But I do think moving forward, neuroscience really is device plus app and data, and I think that again, the sort of the app type scenario where they're delivering some things is going to generate just so much data about what problems are, who has them, and then who benefits from adjunctive treatments like us that are brought in. And I think it will also help on the drug development side as well. I think this profusion of, I think there are two things going on. One is that there's very large amounts of data being collected on an individual with everybody via apps and that kind of data. And I think within the next sort of 2-3 years, you're going to see very rapidly advancing imaging technology that is already sort of really nearly there. MRI quality imaging and $1,000 wearable. That stuff is, not more than 2-3 years out. So I think there's sort of very sharp, very well-defined data on individuals, plus the global data that's collected from everybody is going to create these advantages both in drugs and in devices like us. And I see us basically, I want us to be, when someone goes into a primary into their primary care physician and they say, I have a pain problem, I have a mental health problem. If that doctor then goes, okay, well, you have anxiety as a component of this, so you should use this device first, and then we'll figure out what the next most important symptom is after that for us to deal with. That's kind of how I see the market evolving.
What do you think some of the barriers to adoption are around sort of this, that convergence of digital and medical device? It's new, obviously, but I'm curious, as you see this move on in the next few years, what might be some barriers of adoption?
I think one of the challenges is the FDA and a system that is designed to prove out drugs, adapting to differences with devices. I think that is a challenge. I think it is a challenge that the FDA is grappling with. Someone said recently, I think on one of these seminars, that innovation changes regulation. I really hope that is true, and I hope that it evolves over time, because I think a lot of these new technologies need a different view of how that regulation works. I think that's probably sort of the one of the biggest barriers. In some of the mental health spaces, like fibromyalgia, our go-to, which is our go-to market, we don't really have any ingrained problems, because there's nothing that is working for people, and there's not a lot that anybody's making any money from. So the system is basically there with a whole bunch of people with a very great need, and no real ingrained opposition. I think when it sort of moves into the larger pain processes, I think the early adopters that are already searching for opioid alternatives, I think they will create such a momentum towards change that I'm not really seeing huge barriers. I think the main institutional barriers, I think, have been really taken down by COVID. I was at the health conference in Boston a couple of months ago, and it was the first time that I was at a large conference where mental health took up at least a third of the agenda. So I think the sort of message from mental health professionals to payers of, when you don't deal with mental health stuff, you pay for it in physical health later, but you're really paying for it already, so you should be paying for it upfront to limit your costs. That message has been around for 20 years. I think COVID has really driven that home. They've seen costs spiral, and suddenly it's on everyone's agenda of like, okay, if we deal with mental health, there's a lot of money to be saved in the system here. So I'm bullish. I'm really bullish. I would love to know your opinion on that too.
Well, that's great. I'm bullish on the market as well, and where you coexist. And so we only have a couple minutes. This session always goes fast when I do these interviews, but we have a lot of our audience today is always a great mix of students. We have entrepreneurs, we've got investors, and just we're able to build a company. And though yours came out of some personal tragedy, what advice can you give to the people in the audience who are thinking about starting sort of a digital medical device company? Or just with the audience out there, just maybe some advice you might have for them as they think about this sort of area.
For sure, my number one top tip is minimum viable data. So at every single stage, don't make the mistake that I did, was thinking of credibility as a bar. Think of it as a ladder, and think about what is the next step I can make that de-risks this, that creates an increase in the evidence base. Because there are always cheaper, quicker ways that you can get a little bit of data and get yourself up a ladder step by step, than shooting for the top, which was the big mistake I made, and then took me to 2 or 3 years to learn that lesson. So think about what is the next little bit of data that you can grab that lowers your risk for your investors and gets help from more clinicians.
Thank you so much, Richard. I really appreciate it. And Stan, thank you as well. And just for the audience, I'm a chair of the Breakthrough Alliance, and so I always like to put a plug in for HITLAB, that if you're not a member, please join. If you're an entrepreneur, it's a great place to join and get your company validated by Stan's HITLAB network. And it's a great networking opportunity for those who are part of the digital health community. So I implore you to join not only the Breakthrough Alliance, but be part of HITLAB. Stan?
Thank you, Bill, and thank you, Richard. A wonderful interview and terrific session. Thank you both.
Thank you, Stan.
Thank you, Sam.
And again, it's I think the key lessons learned there really do revolve around this evidence that we talk about. And obviously anyone who's read about HITLAB or been on the website for 10 seconds knows that that's our primary mission, is to really make sure that we are using evidence to verify technologies. Oftentimes stakeholders are using these technologies and are implementing them for 7 or 8 figure implementations. And so they need something that's hypothesis driven and evidence-based. They need quick data and very easy to do modules and ways to verify things as they're doing a launch. And we don't call them pilot studies anymore, by the way. We call them now early launch verification studies, because pilot sounds like it's temporary, it's ephemeral, and it could be going away soon, and it's not a real thing. Early launch and early validation, early verification does indicate an entirely different kind of intuitive and more long ongoing component. With that, again, if you have any questions or if you want to join Breakthrough, please do email breakthrough@hitlab.org. Again, just email breakthrough@hitlab.org. Join Bill and dozens of others, Breakthrough board members or members, and really help bring digital to all 8 billion people around the world through evidence.